Maya stood in the kitchen at 5:30 a.m., her hands trembling slightly as she ladled the simple dal into 3 steel bowls. The aroma of turmeric and cumin filled the air, but today it felt different final. Somehow, she placed each bowl carefully on the tray alongside perfectly round rotis and a small serving of plain rice. But it was a folded piece of paper tucked under one of the bowls that would change everything. 5 years ago, she had stood in this same kitchen with such different hopes. Fresh from her wedding, adorned in new bangles that caught the morning light, she had believed that cooking for her new family would be her path to love and acceptance. She had been so naive then, thinking that perfect meals could season relationships with warmth and belonging. But today, after 1,825 days of cooking, serving, and silently enduring, Maya was about to serve her final meal in this house. What she placed on that tray wasn't just food, it was her declaration of independence, her recipe for self-respect, and the end of a chapter that had slowly consumed her identity, one meal at a time. When Maya first entered the Sharma household as Rajesh's new bride, she carried dreams as bright as a red dupatta. The kitchen had seemed like a sanctuary where she could express her love through carefully crafted dishes. Her mother had taught her well how to balance spices, how the sound of mustard seeds popping in hot oil signaled the perfect moment, how food could be a language of care. "Beta, you cook so well," Kamala Ani, her mother-in-law, had said after Maya's first attempt at making the family's traditional Sunday feast. Rajesh is lucky to have found such a skilled girl. Maya had glowed with pride, her heart swelling with the possibility of becoming an integral part of this family. Rajesh, her husband of 3 months then, had squeezed her hand under the dining table. "Ma's right," he whispered. "You're incredible." His engineering job kept him busy, often requiring late nights and weekend work, but he always made sure to compliment her cooking. "You make this house feel like home," he would say, and Maya believed she was building something beautiful. The house itself was a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Pune's bustling suburbs. 3 generations squeezed into the space Rajesh's parents, his younger sister Priya, who was preparing for her engineering entrance exams, and now Maya. The kitchen was small, barely enough room for 2 people, but Maya learned to navigate like a dancer, moving between the 2-burner stove, the single sink, and the limited counter space with increasing grace. Those early days were painted with optimism. Maya would wake at 5 a.m. to prepare fresh breakfast, have lunch ready before Rajesh left for work, and create elaborate dinners that filled the house with inviting aromas. She experimented with regional dishes, remembering recipes from her grandmother, even learning new ones from cooking shows when everyone else was busy. "You're spoiling us," Papa G, her father-in-law, would say with a gentle smile. He was a man of few words, content with his newspaper and evening tea, but Maya treasured his quiet appreciation. Somewhere around the 6th month of marriage, the appreciation began to morph into expectation. It happened so gradually that Maya barely noticed at first. The compliments became less frequent, replaced by small suggestions. "The dal could use a bit more salt," Kamalani mentioned one evening. Maya nodded, making a mental note. "The rotis were a little thick today." Came another observation a few days later. "Why did you make a loose sabji again?" "We had it 3 days ago," Priya complained, though Maya was certain it had been a week. Rajesh, caught between his family and his wife, began offering gentle defenses. "Ma, the food is fine," he would say, but his voice lacked conviction. His work was becoming more demanding, and Maya could see the stress lines forming around his eyes. The last thing she wanted was to add to his burden by complaining about kitchen politics. So she adapted. She started keeping detailed notes about what she cooked and when, ensuring no dish was repeated too soon. She bought a small notebook and wrote down everyone's preferences, dislikes, and casual comments about improvements. The notebook became her Bible, consulted religiously each morning as she planned the day's meals. The requests became more specific and frequent. Kamala Ani preferred her vegetables cooked until they were almost mushy, while Papa G liked them with a bit of crunch. Priya was going through a phase where she claimed most foods made her feel heavy during exam preparation, requiring Maya to create lighter, more elaborate meals. Rajesh needed packed lunches that wouldn't spoil in Pune's heat and humidity. Maya began waking earlier 4:30 a.m., then 4 a.m. to accommodate everyone's needs. She started preparing different versions of the same dish to satisfy various preferences. Her arms grew stronger from grinding spices fresh every day. Her back ached from hunching over the low kitchen counter. But she told herself this was what family meant. This was love in action. By the end of her first year of marriage, Maya's life had developed a rhythm as predictable as the monsoon rains. She could navigate the morning routine blindfolded. Tea for everyone by 6 a.m., breakfast ready by 7, packed lunch prepared, evening snacks planned, dinner ingredients prepped before the afternoon rest, and the final meal served by 8 p.m. But the rhythm was becoming a cage. Maya, the sambar was too spicy yesterday, Kamala Ani announced one morning, though Maya distinctly remembered her saying it needed more spice the previous week. And can you make sure the rice is exactly how Ma likes it? Rajesh added, not looking up from his newspaper. You know she's sensitive about these things. Maya nodded, as she always did, but something inside her chest felt tight. She had been making rice the same way for months, using the same proportions, the same technique her own mother had taught her. But she said nothing, simply added another note to her ever-growing list of specifications. The social isolation began subtly. Friends from college recall, inviting her for outings or gatherings, but Maya found herself declining more often than not. I need to start dinner prep, became her standard excuse. The family expects meals at specific times. When her best friend Neha visited one afternoon, she found Maya in the kitchen, as always. Don't you ever get tired of cooking? Neha asked, settling on the small plastic stool that served as the kitchen's only seating. Remember how we used to dream about our careers, about traveling? Maya paused in her vegetable chopping. This is important, too, she said, but her voice sounded hollow even to her own ears. Family is everything. But what about your everything? Neha pressed gently. You got that job offer from the IT company. Are you really not going to follow up? The job offer. Maya had almost forgotten about it. 3 months ago, a company had called her for an interview based on her engineering degree. She had been excited, had even bought a new kurta for the interview. But the interview was scheduled during lunch preparation time, and Kamala Ani had mentioned feeling unwell, needing someone to ensure the meal was perfect for Papa G's important guest. Family comes first, Maya had told the HR person over the phone, declining to reschedule. Now, as she watched Neha's concerned expression, Maya felt a strange disconnection from that decision. Had it really been her choice, or had the choice been made for her by circumstances she had allowed to control her life? Years 2 and 3 brought a peculiar form of invisibility. Maya had become so efficient, so predictable in her service, that the family began to treat her presence as a given, like electricity or running water, noticed only when absent. Conversations at the dinner table flowed around her as she served, removed plates, brought water, cleared the table. Plans were made without consulting her schedule. We're going to visit Aunt Sushma this weekend, Rajesh would announce, and Maya would automatically begin planning packed meals for the journey, without anyone asking or acknowledging that she would spend her weekend cooking in someone else's kitchen. Her own family began to feel distant. Phone calls home became hurried affairs, interrupted by the need to check on simmering curries or prepare the next meal. When her mother fell ill, Maya's request to visit for a few days was met with concern about who would manage the household cooking. Can't you go next month instead? Kamala Ani had asked. Priya has her final exams, and you know how particular she is about her meals during study time. Maya had delayed the visit. By the time she finally made it home, her mother had recovered, but Maya felt she had missed something irreplaceable, a chance to care for the woman who had first taught her that cooking could be an expression of love, not obligation. The physical toll was becoming undeniable. Maya's clothes hung looser on her frame, not from intentional weight loss, but from the constant stress and irregular eating patterns. She had developed a habit of eating quickly while standing in the kitchen, often finishing whatever remained in the pots rather than sitting down to a proper meal. Her skin had lost its newlywed glow, and dark circles shadowed her eyes despite her early bedtimes. Rajesh noticed, but seemed unsure how to address it. You look tired, he would say occasionally, but when Maya attempted to discuss reducing her kitchen responsibilities, he would grow uncomfortable. Ma's getting older, and Priya needs to focus on studies. Maybe after her exams. But after Priya's engineering entrance exams came job interview preparations. After that came wedding planning when Priya got engaged. There was always a reason why Maya's burden couldn't be shared, why the family's dietary needs couldn't be simplified, why her own needs had to wait. By year 4, Maya had forgotten what her own preferences tasted like. She cooked according to other people's palates so consistently that when eating alone, she found herself confused about how much salt or spice she actually enjoyed. Her identity had merged so completely with her role as the family's cook that she struggled to remember what else she used to be. The breaking point incidents began accumulating like small cuts. When Maya developed a fever of 101 degrees, she still dragged herself to the kitchen to prepare the evening meal because no one else knows how to make Papa G's blood pressure medication go down like your Dal does, according to Kamala Auntie. When her college roommate got married and Maya was invited to be a part of the wedding celebration, a 3-day affair that would have meant taking a break from cooking, the family's reaction was swift and decisive. "It's so selfish to abandon family responsibilities for friends," Priya had said. "Besides, you know I have that important interview next week. I can't afford to eat outside food and get sick." Maya had sent a gift and her regrets. The day she missed her own mother's 50th birthday because Kamala Auntie had organized a surprise dinner for Papa G's retirement and needed Maya's special touch to make it perfect. Something cracked inside her chest. She stood in that familiar kitchen, surrounded by the aromas that had once brought her joy, and felt utterly empty. That night, she found her old college notebook tucked away in her cupboard. Flipping through pages of engineering formulas and project ideas, she discovered a list she had written during her final year. Goals after marriage. The list included continuing her career, learning new cuisines, traveling with her husband, maintaining friendships, and creating a loving family through shared responsibilities. Looking at that idealistic list, Maya barely recognized the girl who had written it. Where had she gone? When had Maya stopped being a person with dreams and become merely a function in someone else's life? Year 5 brought a clarity that was both liberating and terrifying. Maya had learned to read the subtle signs of her family's moods through their eating patterns. She knew that Kamala Auntie's criticism of the food usually reflected her anxiety about other matters. She understood that Rajesh's silence during meals meant he was stressed about work. She could predict Priya's complaints based on her menstrual cycle and exam schedules. But Maya had lost the ability to read her own signals. She had become so attuned to serving others that she had forgotten how to listen to herself. The incident that changed everything happened on a Tuesday morning in March. Maya had been fighting a persistent cold for 3 days, but she had continued her regular routine because the family needs to eat. As she stood at the stove, stirring the morning dal with one hand and wiping her streaming nose with the other, Kamala Auntie entered the kitchen. "Maya, this dal smells different," she said, dipping a spoon to taste. "Did you put too much in? And why does it look so watery? You know Papa G can't digest watery dal." Something in Maya snapped, not dramatically, not with shouting or anger, but with the quiet finality of a thread stretched beyond its capacity. She looked at her mother-in-law, this woman for whom she had cooked over 1,800 meals, whose preferences she knew better than her own, and felt a profound disconnection. "I'll fix it," Maya heard herself say, but her voice sounded like it was coming from far away. That evening, as she served dinner with her usual efficiency, Maya made a decision. She would cook one more meal for this family. One final meal that would say everything she had been unable to voice for 5 years. Maya woke up that final morning with a strange sense of peace. For the first time in 5 years, she didn't immediately rush to the kitchen upon opening her eyes. Instead, she lay in bed for a few extra minutes, listening to the sound of the household beginning to stir, knowing she would soon be free from the obligation to respond to those sounds with immediate action. She dressed carefully, choosing a simple yellow quarter that she had bought for herself years ago, but rarely wore because it required careful handling, and she was always worried about getting cooking stains on it. Today, it didn't matter. In the kitchen, Maya prepared the simplest meal she could imagine. Basic dal with just turmeric, salt, and a minimal tadka of mustard seeds. Plain boiled rice. Simple rotis rolled without the perfect roundness she had mastered over the years. No vegetables, no elaborate sides, no special preparations. As she cooked, Maya felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in years. She wasn't consulting her notebook of preferences. She wasn't adjusting spices for different palates. She wasn't worrying about timing multiple dishes to finish simultaneously. She was simply cooking food, basic, honest, sufficient food. The most important ingredient went into that meal last. A letter she had written the night before, folded neatly and tucked under one of the bowls. When the family gathered for breakfast, the difference was immediately apparent. "What's this?" Priya asked, poking at the plain dal with obvious disappointment. "Where are the vegetables? Where's the pickle? This looks like hospital food." Kamala Ani tasted the dal and frowned. "Maya, this has no flavor. Did you forget to add spices? And why is everything so basic?" Papa G said nothing, but Maya could see his confusion as he looked at the sparse meal. Rajesh glanced at Maya with concern. "Are you feeling all right? This doesn't look like, it's fine, but—" Maya stood beside the table, her hands clasped in front of her, and spoke with a calmness that surprised even her. "Please read the letter first." Kamala Ani picked up the folded paper with obvious irritation, but as she began reading, her expression changed. Papa G leaned over to read along, and Priya craned her neck to see. Rajesh reached for the letter, his face growing pale as he scanned the words. "Dear family, asterisk for 5 years, I have cooked 1,825 breakfasts, 1,825 lunches, and 1,825 dinners for this household. I have ground spices until my hands ached, stood over hot stoves until my back cramped, and planned meals until my dreams were filled with grocery lists and cooking schedules. Asterisk. Asterisk, I have cooked through fevers and headaches, through tears and exhaustion, through my own hunger and everyone else's complaints. I have missed birthdays, job opportunities, friendships, and pieces of my own life because someone always needed to eat, and that someone was never me. Asterisk. Asterisk, today's meal is simple dal and rice because these are the foods that sustained millions of people for thousands of years before we decided that love could only be measured by complexity, effort, and sacrifice. This meal contains the same nutrition, the same care, and the same intention to nourish as every elaborate feast I have prepared. Asterisk. But today, I am adding an ingredient that has been missing from my cooking for 5 years. My own dignity. Asterisk, I am not leaving because I don't love this family. I am leaving because I love myself enough to remember that I am a person, not a service. I am a wife, daughter-in-law, and sister-in-law. But I am also an individual with dreams, preferences, and the right to exist as more than what I can provide to others. Asterisk. Asterisk, I will be staying at my parents' house. If you wanted to return, I welcome a conversation about how we can build a family where everyone contributes and everyone matters, where meals are prepared together or share responsibility, where my value isn't measured only by what I can cook, and where my dreams are as important as everyone else's comfort. Asterisk. Until then, I hope you enjoy the simple meal, and remember that the most important ingredient in any family is respect, with love and hope for understanding. Maya, the silence that followed was deafening. Maya watched their faces process the words, saw the shock, the confusion, and slowly, something that might have been the beginning of understanding. Kamala Ani spoke first, her voice shaking with indignation. "What is this nonsense, Maya? Have you lost your mind? This is how a family works. Everyone has responsibilities. You think I didn't cook for my in-laws when I was young. But Auntie," Maya replied gently, "you also worked as a school teacher. You had a life outside this kitchen. When did I stop being allowed to have one?" "That was different," Kamala Ani protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Priya looked uncomfortable. "Maya, Didi, I never asked you to, I just mentioned my preferences sometimes. I didn't know you were so upset." "I wasn't upset," Maya said. "I was disappearing. There's a difference." Papa G, who had been silent, cleared his throat. "Beta, we never meant that we appreciate everything you do. I know you do, Papa G, but appreciation isn't enough when it comes with the expectation that I have no choices, that my dreams don't matter, that I should be grateful for the opportunity to serve without being treated as an equal member of this family." All eyes turned to Rajesh, who sat staring at the letter with an expression of dawning horror. When he looked up at Maya, his eyes were wet. "I failed you," he said quietly. "I saw what was happening, and I failed you." Maya felt her own eyes fill with tears, but she kept her voice steady. "You can still choose not to fail me. Rajesh, we all can choose to do better." She picked up the small suitcase she had packed the night before. "I'll be at my parents' house when you're ready to have a real conversation about building a marriage and a family where everyone matters." As Maya walked toward the door, Kamala Ani called out, "But who will cook? What are we supposed to eat?" Maya turned back one last time. "The same thing I've been eating for 5 years. Whatever you can manage, with gratitude for having the ability to feed yourselves." The first week at her parents' house felt like waking up from a long, confusing dream. Maya slept until her body naturally woke up. She cooked simple meals for herself and her parents, meals that reflected her own taste preferences. She had to rediscover like an archaeologist uncovering buried artifacts. "You look different," her mother observed on the third day. "Thinner, but somehow more solid." Maya understood what she meant. She had lost weight from stress, but she had gained something more valuable: the weight of her own presence in her own life. The phone calls in the Sharma household began on day 2. Rajesh called first, his voice heavy with regret and confusion. "Maya, please come home. We can talk about this." "Ma, is she struggling with the cooking?" "Priya tried to make dal yesterday, and it was terrible." "How did you eat for the 28 years before I joined your family?" Maya asked gently. There was a long pause. "It was different then. Ma was younger, and Priya helped more, and I guess I never noticed how much work it really was." Over the following days, Maya learned through these phone calls about the chaos her absence had created. Kamala Ani had attempted to resume full cooking responsibilities and was exhausted within 2 days. Priya had burned rice, over-salted vegetables, and somehow managed to make tea that everyone described as undrinkable. Papaji had suggested ordering food from outside, leading to a family argument about expenses and health. More importantly, Maya learned that conversations were happening in the Sharma household that had never happened before. Discussions about shared responsibilities, about fairness, about the invisible labor that Maya had been carrying alone. After 2 weeks, Rajesh appeared at Maya's parents' house, not to demand a return, but to listen. He looked tired, humbled, and somehow more mature than she had seen him in years. "I want to understand," he said, sitting across from her in her parents' living room. "I want to understand how I let this happen. How we all let this happen." Maya spent 3 hours explaining what her life had been like, not with anger or accusation, but with the clarity of someone who had finally found her voice. She talked about the gradual erosion of her identity, about dreams deferred until they felt impossible, about the difference between contribution and servitude. Rajesh listened without defending, without minimizing, without trying to solve. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. "I want you to come home," he finally said. "But I want you to come home to a different house. A house where you're a partner, not a servant. Where your dreams matter as much as anyone else's comfort." "What does that look like practically?" Maya asked. Rajesh had clearly thought about this. "Ma and I have been talking. She wants to take back some of the cooking. She says it makes her feel useful, and she misses it. Priya is going to learn properly, not just help occasionally. I'm going to take responsibility for breakfast and pack lunches. I should have been doing that all along. And my job search? I already called that IT company. They said the position is still open if you're interested. I'll adjust my schedule to support whatever you need." Maya felt something shift in her chest, something that had been closed for years beginning to open. But she needed to be sure this wasn't just crisis management. And when things get busy, when Ma gets tired or Priya gets stressed with work, when you have project deadlines. Rajesh met her eyes. "Then we figure out together. We order food, we eat simple meals, we ask for help. But we don't put everything back on you just because it's easier." Maya returned to the Sharma household after 3 weeks, but she returned as a different person to a family that was learning to be different too. The changes were small but significant. A cooking schedule posted on a refrigerator with everyone's names, including Rajesh's. a grocery shopping rotation that didn't assume Maya would always be available. Conversations that included Maya in decision-making rather than just informing her decisions that would affect her work. Kamala Ani apologized privately, with the awkwardness of someone learning a new language of acknowledgement. "I never realized," she said. "In my time, we just accepted that this was how things worked. I never thought about whether it was fair." Priya, surprisingly, became Maya's strongest ally in implementing the new system. "I never want to be that dependent on someone else," she declared. "I want to know how to take care of myself and contribute to taking care of others." The meals in the Sharma household became simpler, but somehow more satisfying. When Maya cooked, it was a choice, not an obligation. When others cooked, their efforts were appreciated rather than criticized. The family learned to enjoy dal that was slightly too salty, rotis that weren't perfectly round, and vegetables that were sometimes overcooked. More importantly, they learned to enjoy meals that came with conversation about everyone's day, everyone's dreams, and everyone's contributions to the household. 6 months after her return, Maya received a call from the IT company. Not only were they still interested in hiring her, but they had a position that would allow her to work from home 3 days a week, a perfect arrangement for maintaining her family commitments while building her career. On her first day of work, Maya woke up at 6 a.m. not to cook for others, but to prepare herself for a day of challenges, learning, and professional growth. Rajesh had already prepared simple breakfast for everyone, and Kamala Ani had insisted on packing Maya's lunch. "It's your special day," her mother-in-law said, pressing the lunchbox into Maya's hands. "I want to make sure you had your favorite sabji." Maya looked at the lunchbox, remembering how many of these she had packed for others over the years, and felt profound gratitude not for being served, but for being seen, valued, and supported in pursuing her own dreams. That evening, when Maya returned from her first day at work, energized and full of stories about her new colleagues and projects, the family gathered around a dinner table for a meal that Priya had prepared with Kamala Auntie's guidance. "How was work?" Rajesh asked, and for the first time in years, Maya had stories to tell that weren't about grocery shopping, meal planning, or kitchen challenges. As she looked around the table at her family, imperfect, still learning, but genuinely trying to do better, Maya realized that the most important recipe she had discovered wasn't for any dish. It was a recipe for self-respect. 1 part courage to speak your truth, 1 part willingness to walk away for what doesn't serve you, and a generous helping of faith that love can learn to look different when it's real. 2 years later, Maya's story had rippled beyond her own household. When Priya got married, she had frank conversations with her fiancé about shared domestic responsibilities. When Kamala Ani's friend complained about their daughters-in-law, she found herself defending the importance of balance and fairness in family relationships. Rajesh had become an advocate among his male friends for recognizing and sharing domestic labor. "Marriage is supposed to be a partnership," he would say, with conviction of someone who had nearly lost something precious by failing to understand this basic truth. Maya's career flourished in ways she had forgotten to dream about. But more importantly, she had learned to set boundaries that preserve her energy for the things and people that truly mattered to her. She cooked when she wanted to express love through food, not when it was expected as an obligation. The kitchen that had once been her prison became her creative space again. She experimented with new recipes, taught cooking classes on weekends, and even started a small catering business, specializing in simple, nutritious meals for busy families. But the most significant change was internal. Maya had learned to listen to her own needs with the same attention she had once reserved for others. She had discovered that taking care of herself wasn't selfish, it was essential for having anything valuable to offer to the people she loved. Maya's story isn't unique. Across cultures and communities, countless individuals find themselves slowly disappearing into roles that others have defined for them, sacrificing their identity piece by piece until they wake up one day as strangers to themselves. The lesson isn't that family responsibilities don't matter, or that love shouldn't require effort and sacrifice. The lesson is that real love creates space for everyone to grow, contribute, and be valued as complete human beings. Maya's simple dal and rice, served with a letter of self-respect, became a symbol in her family of the difference between service that comes from love and service that comes from having no choice. True love allows for both giving and receiving, for both serving and being served, for both supporting others' dreams and pursuing your own. The most radical act Maya performed wasn't leaving, it was believing that she deserved to return to a better situation rather than simply accepting what she had always known. She chose to believe that love could learn, that patterns could change, and that families could grow into more beautiful versions of themselves when everyone's humanity is honored. Maya's journey from silent service to empowered self-advocacy might mirror struggles in your own life. Take a moment to ask yourself, where have you gradually accepted being valued only for what you provide rather than who you are? When did you last prioritize your own dreams alongside your family responsibilities? Think about the people around you. Is there someone in your circle who might be slowly disappearing into endless service, sacrificing their identity one small compromise at a time? Sometimes the most loving act is recognizing when someone needs permission to matter. Maya's simple Tao and brave letter remind us that transformation often begins with the smallest acts of self-respect. Her story proves that families can evolve, that love can learn to look different, and that sometimes walking away is the only path back to something real. Now we want to hear from you. Have you ever faced a moment where you had to choose between keeping everyone else comfortable and honoring your own worth? What gave you the courage to speak up, or what's holding you back from finding your voice? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If Maya's journey resonated with you, hit that like button and share this video with someone who needs this reminder that they matter too.